Thank you so much for being here for Deborah Kobylt Live in studio with us. And Kenney, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Been a fan of yours for quite some time, some of the shows that you've written on. You are here today to talk about a fantastic play that you just wrote, Last Call, which just opened this past weekend at the Atwater Village Theater. It was fantastic.
Thank you.
I was there this weekend. You were there with your family. It was a great play. And it's semi-autobiographical about dealing with aged parents. But don't be afraid. It's not depressing. It was actually, it took on a serious topic with a lot of humor, right?
Thank you. Yes, that was the idea. Yeah.
So, got to ask the obvious question. Why'd you write it?
I wrote it because my parents had just passed away, and my agents asked me to give them another piece of material, a new piece of writing material. I had just left Outlander. So kind of, what's the next thing I'm going to do? And at the time, I just didn't have any ideas for, like a television show or a screenplay. So I thought, well, this is what's on my mind, so I'll write about this.
Yeah, let's back up a little bit. When you said Outlander, you've written for LA Law, ER, most recently Outlander. You've written for Civil Wars, switched at birth on ABC. A lot of stuff.
Yes, many shows.
This play centers around an executive from LA, which would sort of be you,
right?
Who comes home and is stunned to see the condition in which her parents have fallen into, right?
Yes.
And the brother is living at home. Can I give a little of that away? I won't give away the big one, but can I say a little bit about the brother that he's home to?
Yes.
You just sort of come home after a little bit of time and think, what happened?
Yes,
right?
Yes. Which is exactly what happened to me with my parents, that, you sort of get an inkling, but you're not really there, and talking to them on the phone, and, they don't want to give stuff away either. They don't want you to know what's going on. So one December, I guess it must have been in about 2013, I went back, and I was just sort of like, wow, what is happening here? So then we had to sort of start this process of trying to get them to move.
It's really hard. I don't know if it's always been that difficult because we talked on the phone. I also just went through this with both my parents and both my husband's parents, so all four of them at the same time. And it was pretty much on us, and it was difficult, and it really, it was very difficult on me emotionally. It must have been on you as well.
Yeah, no, it's very difficult. It's very hard to see them sort of go through that. It's hard to become sort of a parent to your parents. But I can remember my uncle, my mother's brother, telling a story of actually taking away my grandfather's car keys, and that my grandfather cried when he did it. And, you hear those stories and you think, oh, well, when it's time for me to give up my keys, I'll hand them over. I'll know. But that's not true.
I have to tell you, my experience was so difficult for me. We're young people. And I said to my husband, well, maybe we should move into a big apartment or something now. And he goes, what? Because I said, I never, ever want to leave my three sons with what happened to us. It became very chaotic for us. I don't know if it was like that for you.
A little bit.
Yeah, when it came to giving up the keys, Mom stole the keys, ran in the car, pulled out of the driveway, practically ran Dad over. It was those kind of calls I was getting every day, And one fire after another. So that's why when I saw your play, I related to so much of it because you and your brother in the play tried so hard to be respectful of the parents.
Yes, and you do. They're adults, so you're in this, situation where, on the one hand, you think, well, I this isn't safe, or I know that they shouldn't be here, and on the other hand, you think, they're adults. If they want to do this, then maybe I should respect that they want things to be this way.
I agree with you. I tried moving my own parents into assisted living, and after 1 month, my mom said, this isn't for me. And she had some dementia, and I had to respect her. And I sent them home. And that was hard. So
I'll bet.
There's not an answer, is there?
No, although one thing I will say that helps you get through it is a certain amount of gallows humor, which is the play is full of. I just want people to know that, because otherwise I think you'd hear, oh my God, I don't want to go see a play about this. But it's very funny.
Let me be clear. This play is funny. Everything about your character is funny. The brother is funny. The parents are funny. I love the mother. Oh my gosh, she just stole my heart. She's adorable. And Dad is very caring in his tough sort of way.
Yes.
Actually, it's a dramedy, right?
Yes.
To me, it's almost more like a comedy than the drama. So yes, I want to be clear about that too, because it sounds serious, but it's actually very humorous take on something that is serious.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So a little bit about your early career. You know, it seems to be the week of playwrights. I've got many of them on my show this month. How did you get into writing in the first place? I know you were a journalist.
I was a journalist. I got a degree in journalism from Ohio University, and I worked as a journalist for a while. But I always wanted to do creative writing. I just felt like, well, as a journalist, I could make a living as a writer.
Were you a print journalist? Okay.
I wrote for the feature section. I didn't ever chase fire trucks or anything.
Yeah, I chased police cars, but okay.
No, it wasn't for me. And then I just decided maybe I would try writing for television. And I tried sitcoms at first when I was still living in New York City, or I wasn't in New York City, I was upstate New York. And then I read an article in the Long Island newspaper about a guy named Michael Whitehorn, who was in California. It was like A Local Boy Makes Good, and he was writing for Family Ties, which was a sitcom, these many years ago. And he said he would read unsolicited manuscripts. So I wrote a spec, and I sent it to him, and he very graciously read it, and it was a Family Ties spec, and he said, "This is nice, but no, not for me. But if you have anything else, I'll read it." So in the process,
was nice. You often wonder if that's really true or not. So go ahead in the process.
In the process, then I decided if I wanted to write for television, I needed to be in California. I needed to be in LA. So I wrote a Newhart script, and I moved to Los Angeles. And I got a job as a researcher on a documentary about the Air Force. And in the meantime, Michael got a show on the air, and he liked my script, and he hired me. It was really a fairy tale that I didn't realize was a fairy tale until that show got canceled after about 9 months. And then I was temping and doing those sorts of things for a couple of years before I got back in, and then went into drama, got the job on LA Law.
You got to just keep going and persevering. This also, may I add, was a time where there were not a lot of women writers, right? What was the writer's room like?
Well,
like, let's say when you went into ER, that must have been intimidating, no?
Yes.
Good Lord.
Yes.
Imagine your first time walking in there. You got to kind of play it cool. Yeah. But you're in the ER writer's room, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I freelanced the ER scripts, but I was in the writer's room. There were women. That was a very mixed group.
Good to know.
But a lot of times, I was the only woman in the room, and you felt like your choices were either to it's like if a sort of bawdy joke would go around and it would occur to you to say something even sort of bawdier, but I knew that wasn't what I was supposed to do. So my job was to either go, "Oh, you guys," or like, "Oh, I can't believe that."
Or add to it and be even raunchier.
Yeah, well, that didn't go over very well most of the time, but it's gotten much, much better, so that's good.
It's really an evolution, isn't
Yes,
it? And
very
I'm
much so.
finally feeling that, wow, stuff's changing.
Yeah.
I'm on a crusade to change things for women of a certain age. Because I feel like I just called it over 40, and I think women over 40, we've got great stories to tell. They're fun. We've lived a lot of life.
Yep.
Most of us probably weren't homemakers, and we've been out there working. And the entire Me Too movement is fantastic, but we've got to look out for the older gals too.
Yep. Well, the great thing about the play, one of the great things is the director, Lane Allison, is a woman. The producer, Katie Mae Porter, is a woman.
That's
the
right.
woman who's the artistic director, Martha Dempson. So there are lots of women involved in this production, which is really fun.
How would you say working in live theater is different than your work in television?
Well, certainly the writing part of it, and again, I've only written, this play and sort of one before, it is very different because when you're writing for television, you're in a room of a bunch of writers. You're kind of not writing it together, but you break the stories together, and then you submit it, and you get notes, and you get rewritten, and there's a whole process that you go through. This,
you're on your own.
I was on my own. Which
Where did
was
you write it?
Fantastic. In my office at home. It was great. Every word of it is mine, which is really exciting. And also, it was very creatively liberating because I didn't have a template that I was working to. It wasn't like, oh, these scenes all have to be this long. Or if you're writing commercial television, there has to be a commercial break here, and another one here, and another one here. So it was really fun. It's interesting now that it's up and in production. I tell people I sort of feel like I'm in a self-driving car. Like I programmed it, and now I'm in the passenger seat, and I just hope it doesn't crash.
Is that how you were Saturday night when we were there?
A little bit, yeah.
Because I was looking at you. I was watching you with your husband and your beautiful daughter.
Thank you.
And I'm thinking, I wonder what it must feel like for you watching your production come alive on stage.
It's fabulous. It's really fun, and the actors are so good.
The woman looked like you.
Yes, Laura Richardson, yeah. I
She
never
was
thought about that, but I guess she does.
She did, and there was a piece in there, I'm not going to give too much away, but you should go see it, where let's just say she was a tough executive, right?
Yes.
And you know, she appeared to be tough, but layer by layer, we learned more about her.
Yes.
And there was a line in there where she sort of alluded to just how difficult she was to work with. And I thought, oh God, is that Anne? Is that what I have to deal with when I interview her? And you said to me, no.
No.
You weren't that executive, but
No.
you ran into a lot of them.
Oh yeah, and those stories that she tells are all true, not things that most of them, not all of them did I personally experience, but they're all stories that I've heard that happened to people working on shows. Yeah.
Your brother, is he also based on sort of a real...
He's based on a neighbor that I had who lived in his parents' garage. So there is that. But my own brother, other than that he's got a great sense of humor, no, he's not. He doesn't have this. My brother does not have the problems that the brother in the play has.
You know, my friend just posted, she's an acting teacher, and she posted something on Instagram today, and she said, I'm a writer. Anything you tell me, you know, could end up in one of my plays. And I'm thinking, you know, the neighbor, somebody you worked with, watch what you do, because you could end up in somebody's, you know, TV show, movie, or play, right?
Absolutely.
In this case, it was a real collaboration. Yeah.
Yeah, the autobiographical piece of it, other than dealing with the parents, the solution they came up with is not what my parents came up with. But there are so many bits and pieces. There's a piece where they talk about their old pet rabbit, Scampers, who eats grapes. We had a rabbit named Scampers who ate grapes.
So even Scampers made it in there.
He did.
May I say, you know, there is talk of assisted suicide in this play. You know, that comes up in the dialogue. And it also got me thinking on the drive home. I said, you know, where is that still allowed, or is it? Because I didn't even know if it was or if it's not. And they talked about it. You know, they talked about aging and how are they actually going to die. You know, and that was one of the issues. What are your thoughts on either assisted suicide? Should older people be allowed to go on their own?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I do. I think, and I think it would be a really scary thing to decide for yourself, because I think there would be that moment where you'd really think, okay, how far gone am I actually? Even when we filled out our wills and you know, the do not resuscitate box that you check, and there's that moment where you think, okay, how sure are they going to be that I really can't come back before they pull the plug?
I wouldn't fill that. I wouldn't check that box. I said to my husband, "You are keeping me alive, and you're gonna just take care of me in whatever vegetative state that I'm in." So I wouldn't check that one. I just want to be around to be a pain in the ass. But anyway.
But I think, you know, it's a decision that everybody needs to make. There are states, at least when I did the research on the play, which was about 1.5 years ago, where there's still assisted suicide is allowed. Yeah, and I think it should be, because I think, you know, sometimes people come to a place where what going forward is just going to be, you know, waiting to get there.
Or like in the case of the play, you know, the family has to figure out what to do. And that's what I was left with, and it sounds like that's what you were left with. Like, what do we do? Where do we put them? And in the play, you take them back and forth to various assisted living places, and I don't think I'm giving away much. Sometimes they liked it, sometimes they didn't. It's just it's tough all the way around, and
really
we're all
hard.
dealing with it.
Yep. Yeah, most people, not most, but many people who see the play will come up to me afterwards and say either they're in that situation, or they saw their parents go through it, or they have, you know, relatives. It's a very relatable situation.
As a writer, do you see situations in life and you think, I'm going to write about that? Whether it's a TV show, a film, a play, do you do that? Do you continue writing all day?
All the time. I mean, often. In fact, I try to keep, although I'm not great about it, but I do try to keep a little book with just jot down things that happen or that I see, moments, because I think, oh, that'd be great. Somebody just told me about a friend who was, you know, doing chemotherapy, and for whatever reason, she had to take an Uber back and forth to the hospital. And I thought, oh my God, there's a crazy situation, you know, where if you had it, this woman is fine, but if you had a situation where somebody was really on their way out and I'm the Uber driver and what's happening in the back seat, do you know what I mean? To me, that's a fascinating sort of situation. You think, wow, what happens there?
Every day you could show her getting into a different Uber car.
That's interesting. See, you're doing it too. Yeah, that you go,
I'll just collaborate with you on that one.
Yeah,
no, it is.
Yeah.
I look at things like that too, and I wonder.
Yeah. Yep. You wonder what's going to happen here.
But you're somebody who brings, you know, what's written on the page to life for us to see.
Well,
you're working on 2 pilots.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I'm working on one with a company called IDW, which publishes graphic novels. And it's based on a graphic novel called Chica Cabra, which is a young adult supernatural story. That's been a lot of fun to do. Completely like out of my wheelhouse. A friend of mine, Paul Stupin, is the producer, and he brought it to me. And I'm sort of thinking, I love Paul. I want to work with him, but this material, really, me? So it's been a really interesting and challenging experience and fun. And then I'm also doing one that's based on a book called The Forgotten Rebels of Eureka, written by a woman named Claire Wright, who is an Australian writer, and it's based on a piece of Australian history. Kind of like our Boston Tea Party. It was their moment when the people in Australia stood up and said, hey, we're tired of paying taxes and we don't have any representation. They weren't in revolution. They didn't want to have their own country. They just wanted a voice in what was happening.
Where do you sell something like that? Because that's very specific.
Yeah. Well, that one takes place on the gold fields. And in Australia in the 1850s, they had a huge gold rush, not unlike the California gold rush. So people from all over the world went. And what she's done is gone back and looked at that piece of history and said, oh, wait a minute, we all learned that it was all men there. And in fact, there were many, many women there. About a third of the people who were there were women and children. And they were very active in what was happening. They just, it's the old thing, whoever writes history is the one who writes history. It was men
their
writing
story, right. If men wrote it, it's like somehow it's about the guy and all the
Yep.
women doing all the work
Yep.
don't get in the story.
Exactly. So it's fun. So I tell people it's sort of like Outlander meets Deadwood.
Do you have a preference? Do you like doing the theater, the TV?
I mean, I like them both. I think the play for me was, as I say, very liberating because I didn't have any marks I was trying to hit. I wasn't trying to write it for somebody. I think it would be interesting, and I'm not sure I would like it, but I certainly would be willing to try it, to be commissioned to write something. Like if somebody said, can you write a play about X? It would be a very different experience and probably a little more like television writing than what I did, which is I just want to write this. Mm-hmm. So, but they both have, interesting challenges, and it's a muscle that you work, and I enjoy them all. It's really fun.
I got to ask you,
Sure.
because I loved, of course, ER. I mean, do you have a favorite episode or actor that you enjoyed working with? I mean, that's just been on forever. It's almost like I turn on the TV and it's still there. It's always there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, I did a freelance episode. So it was, of course, George Clooney was fun to write for. I got to write for his character. And one day when I was there, he walked into the writer's room. So that was exciting.
Well, he must have taken over the room.
Oh, yeah. He was great. And he was doing something with, I think, Robert Rodriguez. And he had like tattoos all up his neck when he walked in the room. So that was fun. That was great. That was a great experience. I really loved that. And I loved writing. LA Law was really fun. I wrote for a lot of law shows and learned a ton, although I was never a lawyer and never wanted to be one.
Yeah, but you've got to know a lot if you're writing that dialogue.
Yeah, you had to do a lot of research.
Because people fact check. You got to know your stuff.
Yeah. Well, we had a lot of lawyers on staff, and that show, when it was on, lawyers loved it because it made them seem so cool and sexy and interesting. So you could easily call somebody up and just say, "Hi, I'm from LA Law," and they'd be like, "Oh, I'm happy to talk to you."
Absolutely, ma'am. You got to wait in the wait in the waiting room.
Yep.
Wow, that must have been. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. Because I've worked on other shows, most shows, where you call and they say, you tell them the name of your show, and they're like, "What show is that? What network is it on?" So it was very fun to have one that you told them, and they just immediately recognized it.
Well, I'm glad to know you weren't necessarily the character in the play, but I fell in love with her. She was great. Also, the acting's terrific in this play. Last Call, over at the Atwater Village Theater through February 23rd.
Yes, and you can get your tickets at openfist.org.
openfist.org. Please go see it. It's actually very funny. And I'm telling you, it was one of those where we were talking about it on the ride home, talking about it the next day, calling our friends saying, go see this thing. So
Thank you.
Great evening out. Appreciate it. A takeaway that you want to tell our audience about the play, about you or anything?
Only that I think that the play will, as you say, make you think about things and maybe change the way you look at yourself and your parents a little bit.
Yeah. And it's just a great night at the theater. Anyway, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Deborah.
And thank you for being patient. Last week we had technical issues. So Anne was kind enough to come back this week, and she waited, and you're just a very patient woman. So I do appreciate it. A busy
pleasure.
lady and very patient, so thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks, everybody, for tuning in. You can watch our show on Facebook and YouTube, and also listen on the iHeartRadio app and also Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for being here for Deborah Kobylt Live, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.